And Jim, who is from the Vincent Community College, if you want to join us at the table as well, you have views of the community. So I know that there wasn't the time to have them in the report due to the constraints. So,
and I'll stay here, not participating in all item.
Bring the chair.
I think the report is read. In short, it's a request to approve an order to occupy from the Alexandra Blossom Festival Committee for the container to store all the floating equipment, etc. at 60 Boundary Road. The report back the Vincent Community Board approved the recommendation today for you to accept the recommendations as set out in the questions.
Jim, did you want to cover?
Just for the community, Vincent Community Board, this is part of our vision was to try and redevelop that Boundary Road area. So this would just lead part into that. The more people on that space we have, the better. Otherwise, it's abandoning. So this falls in line with everything, and nothing.
It's similar to our upcycles container that's also been used a year ago.
It's all quite self-explanatory, which is great. I'll just pick up my resolution page.
Tidy.
So the recommendations that we receive the report and accept the level of significance and approve granting of a licence to occupy to the Alexandra Blossom Festival Committee, incorporated over approximately 30 square metres of Boundary Road site for 5 years for the storage of parts needed for float building and community-owned Christmas decorations. Hopefully that will encourage loads more people to enter the float in the Blossom Festival. Authorises the Chief Executive to do all that is necessary to give effect to the resolution. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Andrew and Nathan. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. And we then move into the leasing and licensing policy adoption on page 190.
Thank you. Again, I regard the report as read. The report explains the engagement process we've entered into after you've approved the draft leasing and licensing policy. Since the engagement, we've made a few recommendations of changing in the policy. And I would like to acknowledge Karen Monroe's missions, which we received and addressed. Also, as to, I've included that clause now that says in exceptional circumstances, there are an ongoing and direct property related costs. The council and the tenant may agree on an alternative method determining the rent. I've also stipulated in the report the other changes that we're recommending, which covers most of the people that has made submissions. There was actually 4 people that wanted to address the council today, but I have addressed the concerns of 3 of them satisfactorily, so they started not to come anymore. So any questions on the report and the changes recommended?
One question in relation to the airport lease, a rent review every 3 years, is that?
That's been the standard practice for years. And I must say there was an oversight not to include. We only recently took over the airport leases from Tara. So when I drafted the initial changes, we didn't consider that. And that was one of the questions that was raised in the submissions, because they were saying they've got a 3-year rent review, not a 2-year rent review. And they didn't want to be classed as a commercial activity because they aren't really a true commercial activity.
So I guess it's a unique piece of land up there and obviously unique circumstances for, having a lease up there. I'm just conscious that is that, and I guess I'm happy to be guided by you guys. Are you satisfied that 3 years is appropriate and it shouldn't be a shorter period for that?
we are satisfied because it's quite costly these days to get evaluations done. And if it's in a 2-year cycle, it could actually cost more than the value of the renters that you come getting in. So yes, my answer.
Yes.
I just need to point out one thing though that I have seen in the policy when I read through it a million times this morning. That in the policy itself, on page 208 of the policy, I've put the commercial lease rent reviews as every 5 years, and then later on in the, address the rent reviews for each one. I've put it as 2 years, which is actually the correct one. So I'm just going to have to amend that in the policy.
You must be quite disappointed with the response from the promotion, I would guess, because there were very, very few people actually responded to that, didn't they?
Yes.
Just because I was so happy with it.
Bloody-
To be honest,
It's good news, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I did get a few calls and emails, but oh,
I think as well, the team have quite good relationships with a lot of people, so that's when getting clarification
Yeah.
and stuff
Yeah.
as well. Hey, so
most people were concerned about how it will affect them.
Mhm.
And once you
Yeah.
explain, it's
So in other words, you weren't disappointed. Okay. You weren't.
No.
Of the things we've found with these in the past is that you can't predict all of the possible anomalies that might come from
Yeah.
this with the different mechanisms and people account for things and but it does seem to be that this is kind of the best broad that going to cover all those big issues that might come up as best we can.
It's quite lenient and flexible now. The council can make calls on outside of the boundaries of the guidelines.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, move through, please, and second. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Cheryl. All those in favour? Against?
Report, are you doing that one or am I coming back? It's fine.
Should. We're going to go back up to roading. I'll hand over to Stu.
Okay, we all let there.
156.
1.2, there you go. A 26.9.1 amendment to the road stopping on Fulham Road, Full Road, Rebanana is a boundary road.
Yeah, I take the report as read. The purpose is this was actually a decision the council made in 2022. I inherited this when I started 18 months ago. We've since been working hard at it, but the recommendation basically covers the simple, short reason we brought it back was to remove the amalgamation of Area A to the joining land of the lease to the golf club. And it's just for legal reasons. The land status there could be problematic moving forward and trying to win those titles. So we're just recommending that we basically stop the road, keep it as a reserve land and not amalgamate it with the adjoining title. And then there's a easement requirement that we've noticed for protecting our water infrastructure that we just recommend we address as well.
Questions?
One came around and we thought we'd done it properly. Yeah. Probably just reiterating that it's not being stopped to be sold or to be something that really just creates a random strip of land for someone else in the middle of nowhere. It's to be what it is.
We'll move the recommendation. Second it. Andrew, those in favour?
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Are we back into sequence now on Helen?
We are back into, we're still in roading.
Right.
Are we?
Well, yes, because I've handed over to you because we're going back
Yeah.
up now. So we now need to cover off proposed non-replacement of bridges.
Sorry.
Well,
Yeah, that's what.
so you can all stay and enjoy the reports of your co-workers.
Okay, I take it you've all read and familiarised yourself with the report. We're here to consider the non-replacement of 6 closed bridges. Bridges numbers 2, 4, 80, 96, 121 and 171. And that they are decommissioned, not replaced and permanently removed from our list of bridge stop. Questions?
I just like the hilarity of the fact that we have
Has anyone got any questions?
bridges that have already washed away. Brilliant.
Nothing there.
Where are they?
One of them is still there. That's not on council land.
So it was put there, but it wasn't on council land, it was put there originally.
Yes,
So they must have had a good council in those days.
very generous.
Why did you make that decision, Stu?
Right, no further questions. Anyone like
I've
to-
got a question.
Oh, sorry, I asked questions. Tracy, you've got a question?
Just, and this has come around a couple of times, and given that there is already Fords and things being utilised in some of these places, anticipating that there could be other things coming up in the future, how are we engaging Royal We, which really means you guys, with ORC and their team to enable Fords being able to be used more sensibly going forward, so that we can have that as a good option where the cost of building another bridge is too cost prohibitive.
So all of these, all bar one of these bridges have Ford alternatives. The only one that doesn't is a 200 or 300 metre detour. They're all natural Fords. They're not Fords that we've constructed. Maintenance of them is minimal, if not non-existent. We will engage with ORC if improvements need to be made, but they all, apart from the one that's on private land, do have alternative routes, albeit inconvenient alternative. The larger alternative routes are on unmaintained roads anyway, so naturally the Ford itself is unmaintained.
So with those Fords, but when we get to the point where there might be something coming up, and I'm not pointing to anything in particular, how is that, is there going to be a mechanism to deal with ORC and their requirements for creating Fords, especially if we have to do a created Ford going forward?
So in all of these instances, we won't need to create the Fords because they're already
Yeah.
there.
But in the
It
future.
would be bespoke.
Yeah.
It would be case by case around what needs, because again, there might be that's natural, that's fine, that's easy, as opposed to actually forming a new Ford, doing any sort of structure in the waterway and everything like that would go through a resource consent process and everything. So it would be bespoke piece. And if there was a report coming to you in the future that had one where something might need to be created, and as the bridge strategy talks to consider lower level of service structural removal of bridge, that might be us spending some money to create that lower level of service and do a Ford formation, but that would be case by case basis depending on what's appropriate.
Yes.
A lot of these, all but one of these bridges it doesn't exist, so we're not replacing something that doesn't exist. But I guess for put it on our radar, is there any other bridges that you are considering that exist currently that you're considering and they're due for replacement that may not be replaced?
Yeah, Bridge 160 is on our radar, but we need to engage further with affected landowners.
So just one at the moment.
Yeah, that's.
But going into the 10-year plan, there'll be /30-year plan of bridge replacements. There will be a number of bridges tagged that do not replace, and will be again on a case by case basis engaging with landowners, looking at what alternatives there are as a Ford appropriate, as the detour short enough that Ford's not required, different things like that. So it'll be a case by case basis, but there will be a number of structures that hit the red aspects of that bridge matrix.
Bridge 160 is top of the list of ones that we need to work through. There will be others come forward in the short term. There are other bridges that we are investigating divestment potential around, and we'll table that. We can afford those bridges as they surface.
And the reason 160 doesn't appear in this report is there isn't actually, a Ford's not a viable alternative. It's across the Taieri. There is an alternative access for it, but it is a reasonably long detour. But we need to work through as, whether there isn't a lower level of service option, what the approach is.
I've got a question for you. Nothing really to do with our bridges, but out of these natural events that have been happening in North Island, has there been any, I guess, learnings or workings that have come out? Because some of those bridges are replaced and washed out again straight away. So is there any large scale thinking about bridges or types of bridge structures we have now compared to, especially in the East Coast or North Island on those high risk areas or Nelson, like, or are we just banging bridges back in the way they were on the existing and hoping for the best? I mean, is there learnings from all these things, I guess I'm saying?
I can probably talk to that a little bit, Stu. So like, through the bridge design process, you're doing a lot of prelim stuff. So we're getting hydrological surveys done, so we understand the way itself. We do bore drilling and core wall testing for bearing strengths and soil types around the bridge, and also catchment and flood calculations as well too. And they all feed into the design on the bridge, and that includes defence against water, which is basically scouring of your abutments and any other parts of the structure. So again, each bridge is a little bit of a case by case basis, but for a new bridge design, like a full bridge replacement rather than just a deck and beam replacement, of course we'll just do that and leave the rest of it the way it is. There's a fair bit of rigor goes around making sure that the abutment design is suitable. It will get designed to a certain recurrence level, whether that be 50-year or 100-year flood. It really just depends on the case.
Some of those guys get 50-year floods all the time, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's the process, and again, it's a case by case basis. But the likes of Bridge 145, that level of rigor has been done before it went to tender at the start of July. Yeah, so hopefully that answered your question.
How much of those ones are the, especially at the East Coast, of some of the ones up north? And I know I was in Marlborough just before that flood the other day. There's not a lot of bridge work done and cleaning out under rivers anymore. And it's just basically, you see where there's always been floods, you see a bit of mediation work done on the state highway, but to lose a state highway, really, massive areas, and you just wonder whether the engineering 20 or 30 years ago or just maintenance has not been done under the bridges.
Yeah.
I just wonder if there's anything come out at a government level or a roading level to, because I learned
145 is the first tender we've put out, and we're well around a full new bridge replacement. So it's actually going to be really interesting to see and that's putting that out to the market to see what sort of design and innovation comes through that. So when that does come back in, so in October, depending on the value, whether that's thing, we'll come back and give some information around what we're sort of seeing in the market around that, because again, around costings and all of that, it's going to be, this first one's a bit of a learning for us in our future bridge replacement program.
So, but in terms of what he's saying with channel maintenance, which is ORC's responsibility?
Depends on how far away from the structure you're talking.
We can do that under our global consent at certain times of the year. We can do embed clearance work as long as it's no more than 10 hours in the water, 20 metres upstream or downstream the bridge. But I mean, that only allows us to do so much, and quite often the problem could be 21 metres past the bridge, you know what I mean? And further, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, we can maintain out 20 metres. We can carry out maintenance and rock protection on abutment piers and stream piers and stuff like that. But we are a little bit limited. However, our global consents are coming up for renewal in 2029. So we're already starting to think about what additional conditions could we maybe have to ask for around maintenance around structures. At the moment, we haven't got one for culverts. for culvert maintenance, and we've got some large culverts that are pretty much acting as bridges, both in volume and
Yeah.
and what they're carrying. So we want to get that tidied up, but I also want to have a discussion with ORC or whoever that entity might be by the time we get
We might be nice.
3 years down the track, you know.
Homework on that one.
We might become part of the solution.
Might be talking to some of the same people around the table, you never know.
That's how it might get done.
Yeah, that we do want to have a discussion about, hey, can you give us a little bit more scope view to protecting structures?
Yeah, because the bridge generally that has been there for 100 years and washes away in a flood. From what I hear, they're generally washing away, not because of the structural integrity of the bridge, but because the channels that block the waters.
Or there's willows coming down and taking piles out.
Yeah, that's, yes.
Scott Lane's a prime example of that.
Yeah.
Where it was debris, and debris that say should have been managed by ORC. Ended
Yeah.
up in Ruin.
And that's where I was going. I was thinking the short.
That was my argument a long, long time ago. If you're willow trees that you're not managing, wreck our bridges, so you're liable for us to sue you.
Yeah.
Conversation with Sarah about that. Never mind. Tracy.
I guess just following on from that, just that the ORC is not all bad. And,
No one's questioning their ability.
and
Better when it's on.
And potentially going forward, the ORC may be able to facilitate and help in relation to willow removal. So I think that's something that we should be encouraging thoughtful conversation going forward. It's my only thing.
Where that councillor does thoughtful conversation. Thank you, Tracy. You would like to move the recommendation? Curtis, second. Tracy? All those in favour? Carried, thank you.
Take them.
What have you got next? That's me now?
Oh, you again.
No, Kimberley Road, Colbert Road, Gibson.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll take the report as read. So today here to talk about considering temporarily closing a section of Culprit Road, Gibston, to motor vehicles to reduce damage over the winter months. So obviously we have had a program of winter closures on some of our unsealed network, mainly our track network. And it's a twofold thing. Obviously, one is protection of the asset over those winter months where they are very susceptible of freeze, thaw and vehicle damage, but also the safety aspect as well too of making those areas accessible in winter conditions that can get pretty dangerous. So this one came at a request from the landowner, because obviously you would say it's an unformed legal road, but it has farm track on it, and obviously it was having quite a big effect on his ability to be able to do general winter farming operations. So hence the reason why we're putting this one forward and individually, although we paper to council not so long ago about the other roads as well too. So so there's a map there, and obviously our recommendation is that you receive the report and accept the level of significance and resolve to allow the temporary closure of Culprit Road, Gibston, from the district boundary to Doolan's Creek. Any questions?
Any questions?
The brilliant map of a red line in the middle of a hill and.
Yeah.
Actually parked in the bottom of Colbert.
That's the other end.
Sorry?
Does QLDC close the Gibson Valley in?
Yeah, a lot of it.
No.
No, it just goes up and over Colpit Saddle and then the boundary is just on the
Oh, did you?
dark side of the hill. Shady side of the hill down there.
On the lowland.
Martin moved, anyone second? Nathan, all those in favour? Carried. And just to comment on unformed roads, I was talking to a guy who used to pull people out of roads a long time ago up the sticks and Serpentine, and someone got stuck and it took hours to get back. He drove up with a tractor and there's a big pile of water, and he said, here, you shoot in there and put the chain. And the guy goes, I wouldn't get me out of my truck to do that. You do it. Got in the tractor and drove away. The policeman that was travelling with him, man, talked to him.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Said maybe you could get out of him. I've come all the way from the sticks.
Tracks up there, did we?
yeah, no, Doc, we've talked to Doc about this. So
This
they'll come in.
is past the water race.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you still got access to those dock areas. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And
And then we'll.
Go home then.
Last thing, I think. No. Then we're back. To where we were.
Okay, so item 26.9.6 on 115. Alpha Street, future plan for decommissioned water. Julie.
It's actually a property.
Yeah.
It's all of us, it's a team.
Oh,
And I don't know where my staff have gone.
she stood up and said that so many
I'm
times.
gonna say, I take the ball for what is read. Any questions, please?
And I guess I'd clarify, we have provided in the treatment budget to take that equipment out of the electrical building, which is the brick building, and to demolish the and finish the ground level for the other building. As part of the demolition, the steel and the line over the top will be salvaged. If somebody wants that, they could, we can make that available. But we haven't planned to take it out as one structure because I'm not sure that that's actually achievable. But if someone wanted to put it back together like a Meccano set somewhere else, they could.
Yeah.
It has got a big hole in it. The building's got a big recess in it and there's a lot of sand. So the sand is being used to fill the recess by knocking it down. That's why there's a additional cost if we have to come back to do it.
How big is the hole?
It's quite significant. Yeah, if you look at the building from the outside, you do kind of look at it and think, oh, this could be useful. But when you go inside and you actually see, it's a big pit. It's a significant pit. Yeah.
It's been deep in a hole. Okay.
No, it's not. but it's- Yeah.
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 That's right.
Yeah, on page 138.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
So that 160,000 on eight. That would take, that
No.
make it take it to.
So what, at the moment, we've got a contract to do the decommissioning of these buildings and it's priced in. They have to go away. We lose our contractors from site and there's a time delay. They're estimating it'll cost $150,000.
On top of 160,000.
Well, yeah, it's just we need to close our project out so that we can reallocate our budgets to spend them this year for council before we transition to the other one.
So
Kind of need to make.
Part of the budget of the decommission, it's not an extra. If it's done now, it's part of that.
Yeah,
It's part of the project budget as a
We would
whole.
end up spending
Extra.
less, but at some point, someone else is going to have to spend some money and the budget won't be available
Yeah.
later on.
Hmm.
There's a window of opportunity to put it through now as part of this project, but we can't hold that budget. for a while.
So could it actually, could we actually fill in the hole, if you like, take away all the structure underneath and leave the actual filter itself there?
No,
Yeah,
not
well-
easily.
You can. I mean, you can do anything you want. I'm throwing enough money at something. So the entire structure is supported on the steel.
Yeah.
So all the concrete and reinforcing and stuff would have to be cut away and removed,
Right.
which we haven't costed. Now I've done some high level estimates, but that has to be verified. And that would be, I suppose you could use the sand, as Judy was saying, and some of the hard fill to go in the pit, fill it up, and then maybe deck it or something like that. We did do a concept, a real high level concept to turn this into a shelter. A problem that I have with this is Helen went to both the senior and the junior football groups and they weren't interested in this being a shelter. And if your community groups are not interested in it being a shelter, I'm unsure why we would hang on to.
They're not the only community group, are they?
No.
Could we not repurpose it somewhere else? Because from what I understand, there is a possibility that the whole thing could be actually just sort of gas cut off at the base and lifted.
No, I don't think it's quite as simple as that.
Yeah,
It'll probably collapse in there.
You have to deconstruct it carefully. You're talking about a big crane coming in to boom off the roof, reassemble. And where are you going to store this thing? Because, it's under roof is 250 square meters.
Yep.
Where are we going to put this thing? Like Gordy said that at the community meeting, we have done no planning in relocating this structure at all. So for the sake of hanging on to, want of a better word, a few pieces of metal, where we have no facility to store it. Anyway, it's not my decision. It's just.
I think that
the thing is that the cost to take it down carefully to be able to do that and shift it is quite significant. And when you start looking at what you might want it for, you could probably build something purpose built
Cheaper.
cheaper a lot of the time, but the materials could still be reused if someone wants to use them in a building. I mean, it's just we're not. The extra time to carefully pull it down and re-pull it up could be quite a lot.
It'd be a terrible shame to actually put a bulldozer through the whole lot, wouldn't it?
We
Probably.
did
I don't think we'd use a bulldozer.
There's a real anomaly here, and Mark Jessup touched on it this morning, where you have a community book group that desperately want to keep a building for their community. And they are working so hard to make that happen in Miller's Flat, and they come into the community board and they're saying, we want to do this and we could do this and we could do that. And here we're sitting around the table trying to think, oh, we could use it for this or we could use it for that, because nobody in our community has been banging on our door saying, what are you doing with that old building? We'd love to use it for X, Y, Z. And they have with the building next door.
Do they know it's available though?
Yeah.
Well,
that's
they've
what I-
identified the building next door.
So if we're after a shelter and saving the structure, it's going to be cheaper to start fresh. Use the water budget, get rid of it. I think the community need to take some ownership on this, and if they really want a shelter in the future or whatever they want to use it for, get out and get going and drive that forward. I mean, to us to say, well, let's save it because they might want it and it's going to cost an extra 150 grand. I mean, I'd like to see a bit more community drive behind it before we do that, you know. And
I
then,
mean, to be fair, the junior and senior Cornwall Football Club were approached.
Yeah.
And that they would be the logical
And they don't want it.
community group to actually use it, and they don't want it.
yeah,
They want the other building.
They don't want it. They're the ones on location, but is there anyone else around the community who might want it? And they're happy to relocate it.
Couple come for whatever they backed off.
Yeah, and look, I've been doing construction a long time. So the first assessment of that building, because there was an interest saying, let's turn it into a cafe. So that means weatherproofing the building and closing it in. It is non-viable. And then I went and verified that with a couple of architects that did me a favour. Right, so that is not a viable option, and we shouldn't even be exploring that option. And that's why we came up with the shelter, because I thought, again, I also thought the community could probably benefit from a shelter. But if the two groups that are using that facility the most are not interested in that, then I'm kind of going, well, there might be other community groups, but what value is that to them? And I'm going to reiterate this, for want of a better word, you can build something cheaper, right, from scratch, opposed to trying to retrospectively fit something that has to be deconstructed and then reconstructed again.
If we are going to actually deconstruct it and save or repurpose the steel work, we have to find somewhere to store that anyway.
I would,
Go to salvage.
yeah, I wouldn't suggest that. There'd be a lot of, I'm going to use the Catholic church in Christchurch as an example. Reconstructing that building and then reconstructing it really costly, and that's why it's still standing the way it is, right? The same thing happens here. To build from scratch is way cheaper. You do your materials list, you order it in, it arrives, you construct it, it's done, right? Yeah, you're talking about actually carefully deconstructing something and then reconstructing it again. It's a waste of money, in my opinion.
So just quickly, while I accept the financial side of things, what about the steel? Is that going to be recycled as in sent to a recycler? Type thing?
What does salvage mean?
Yeah, so salvage is recycling is what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's often that's sometimes the steel has a value, so sometimes that offsets the costs of demolition.
It won't be huge because,
No.
yeah, but it is actually not just going to be
Oh, yeah,
landfill.
no.
Okay, that's all it is.
And like Julie said, the sand and probably some of the hard fall we used to fill that pit in as well. So
Yeah, I think the reality is it's like the problem really where this action's going to be happening for a number of years now. And if people have been had an interest, well, often the football clubs obviously expressed an interest in the other building. And we've agreed to that. I mean, this just seems to get rid of it. Smoke it.
The only
Smoke it. Thank you.
What would be good though is the community board meeting. I just pulled up the resolutions from the last meeting where this was discussed, and resolution C was that to recommend to council that the treatment plant building is retained while options for repurposing the shelter be explored and the budget is allocated for this in the 2737 LTP. It would be good for the community board to know that like it feels quite often that we talk about all this stuff and it's got all this weight and then it comes here and it's not even mentioned. We need to just circle back and tidy that up and say it has been. We've decided it isn't actually fruitful, but acknowledging that discussion, because I think the community board quite often feel like it's done and then they're appeased and then you walk away and it comes here and it's like, we're bowling it, we weren't listening. It would be nice to acknowledge, even if we're not going to follow it through, that it has actually been considered. And that we acknowledge it at this level, so the papers then do follow on, so you can trace that back and say, where was that decision made? Because community board are going, oh, we said keep it. And then you come to council and that wasn't even.
There's quite a lot of strong feeling about it too, wasn't there?
Yeah, and I think it was more about it not
But
being
they were
wasted,
status reports, wouldn't it?
not being, you know, that's all.
We took a paper for recommendation.
Sorry, if we turn it down, then the community board can find it in the status reports
Yeah.
in the future.
Isn't that the case, right? We make the decisions on some of that stuff,
Yeah,
even if it
but-
is against the recommendation of the community board. And sometimes the community boards had too much say on how to run a council business.
But knowing where that got to, when you look back, the community board is helpful, just to know that it was there, like it disappears off the paper altogether. I'm not saying that it should be followed through and it's a recommendation, that's all, but the fact that there's a resolution with the recommendation, having that acknowledged and the discussion does say.
So some more information we do have now that we didn't at the time was part of that conversation was you could potentially sort of like unbolt the
Yeah.
foundation and lift it off and just a visual inspection without having an engineer going along the steel structure as part of the concrete structure. So there's a wee bit more to it than a Meccano set like.
Yeah, and I think we probably knew that anyway, but the fact that they, you know, like I said, I was ambivalent about that in the first place, but there was a lot of feeling there that they wanted to make sure we're not just bowling something that could have been used, like just to acknowledge that that has been explored. It's not fruitful, we'll move forward, but just get that in there.
It has actually. I mean, there's been quite a bit of debate around this particular table. It's pretty clear that has actually been talked about and taken seriously. But the logistics of it have looked out to be perhaps not the way the community board actually would like it to end up.
And is that one be involved if there was a use for it was the main thing, you know, have we made sure we've ticked all the boxes before we go and knock someone over and then go, oh, actually, that would have been quite useful to be. But that was there. As long as we can say we've completed that process, I think that's good for them.
So is there any further discussion?
So I'll just add, the good news in all of this is that the new Cromwell water treatment plant is now commissioned and operating, and the new mechanical and electrical building, the landscaping's around it, it looks really good.
Tidy.
Anyone wants to go and have a look, let us know, we'll take you through it.
Good news. It looks really good from the water side now.
So the recommendation is that we receive the report and accepts the level of significance, agrees that a lease is entered into with the junior and senior Cornwall Football Club to enable the electrical switchboard and communications building to be repurposed as a changing shelter, and that that the treatment plant building is demolished and ground reinstated as an addition to the current waters project. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Stu, Martin, all those in favour? Against? Carry. Thank you.
Not Cheryl. I think we are back. If we go to ticket pricing and sales, is that where we're up to now?
Yes.
Thank you. Page 285.
Over the place like a man.
All right, we get there. As long as everything's tipped at the end of the day. Saskia and Dick.
Thank you. We wrote a report together.
This is our first joint report.
Yeah, hey, you do know council. So
Where have you guys?
Thank you. So this is a little bit of an administrative thing,
Ticket
but
sales.
we don't actually have delegation to be able to do this. So our way that our fees and charges work is everything comes across this table to be approved. And we don't have any sort of delegation for CEO, myself or Saskia to be able to set ticket prices for things. So we've had like the opening event at Te Puna Mahara, and that was just cost recovery is what we were planning on there. But to be able to do that going forward, getting more people in, ballet, all of that kind of stuff, instead of us coming back here every month requesting a ticket price, this paper is asking for delegation from you to be able to set some ticket prices and a little bit of guidance around that as well, just in the policy around the level of cost recovery, things like that, just to be able to give us a bit of guidance as staff to be able to set some of those prices going forward. And keep it all about forward.
Have modelled this on other similar policies that exist in other local government areas, and the idea with having someone sort of from your corporate and community is obviously, David representing the sort of the community interests and I representing sort of that cost to get that balance of that test right in the so hence the suggestion for it to include delegations and there's sort of a joint decision.
Yes.
Happy that that's the most efficient way of making decisions on billing, or is it going to be something that involves? I'm just thinking it's also, if we start having 5 things a week that are ticketed events, is that capacity to wait to see the ticket prices for 5 events a week?
Yeah, I mean, as far as planning is concerned and stuff, we've looked a few months out already, and it would be this is the cost to run the show. This is what we're going to try and sell the tickets for. We've still got to upload them to our booking system and do all of that kind of stuff. So having me approve it and giving the amount of things that we're across and approving already anyway, it just gives us a nice tight guidelines to stick to make sure that we're meeting council's expectations and being transparent with the community. So we'd probably we could wrap this up as part of the performance reviews that we're doing for Te Puna Mahara every sort of 6 months and bring that back as this is how this is going for us. Currently, we don't have, I guess, we call it a lawful way to be able to do it because we don't have that delegation from council. Yeah.
I guess over time, if it was inefficient, we could come back to council and suggest further delegation down to the manager level, or whatever that looked like. Yeah.
And I think I'll just add, this is sort of more events that we would run. So say if somebody came in from Auckland and hired the auditorium for 3 nights and they were putting on the event themselves, they would set their own ticket price. This is for events that we would be running. So
I guess my question is, assuming that if this was let's say it was a private entity, as in running this kind of operation, it would be potentially tied to staff of, a particular staff member or group of staff for their performance side of things. When we're talking about Te Puna Mahara, that's quite a bit bigger than everything else in the district. So that's kind of probably an easy model, commercially easier model to run. What happens when it's something in relation to a community event, an event, but it's run in one of our future focused smaller events like the Hub in Omakau or down in Roxburgh? And how does that look? Does this apply to all of them or just Te Puna Mahara?
Well, I'm thinking more sort of broad. Te Puna Mahara did kickstart it, but thinking more broadly as well. Like if we start having pool parties, we're looking at other revenue streams of having, providing a barbecue and a disco night and wanting to charge $15 to cost recover. Then we've got an ability to do that here to run more events and things like that we want to put on.
So it's across the board.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So how we all agreed that we're going to have cost recovery. If we have other issues in council, we've got to get a return. Our focus is actually now getting return on investment. We've got a $40 million investment. Now we only want to recover in the cost. Well, I'm pretty sure that if there's functions running from other parts of the region, and I guess the only problem with having staff having all that say, we could actually have unless you've got a really structured costing relative to the museum in Dunedin or the art gallery or something like that, if you gave one, I guess about consistency of pricing, right? And that's going to be pretty hard because if you get it wrong, you got it wrong for everything. And the real risk is if you can't be mates to someone and not to the other sort of thing. Pricing is a tricky thing.
If you were of the mind to approve this today, that in, as David said, 6 months' time, we come back with a description of the council run events, what they were, and our, high level, our approach, cost recovery, all that kind of stuff. And so you guys can see what we've done for the last 6 months and have a discussion around whether that's where council wants to be, you want to change or what have you, and sort of set that after we've had a few events.
Well, I guess it's hard knowing what the events are going to be unless you're manufacturing an event.
Just what they're proposing.
But what I'm saying is that you've got cost of $2.5 million you've got to try to recoup.
Talk to us, being in this business. Rule of thumb is you use it. If it's a gig in the auditorium, you have 400 seater, you've got a rule of thumb saying you want 60% house to break even. Right?
Yep.
And that's basically how you do it, right? And anything over that 60% is profit.
Yep.
I think, if we're going to be acting as entrepreneurs in our own building, which is something to be encouraged, and the team are telling us they need this policy to be able to actually do that. I'm quite supportive of that. But then we also, as governors, we need the opportunity to review that, and that's what you're basically coming out. Give them 6 months of trying to be entrepreneurs. If it's not working, then we have to revisit it. But currently, what you're saying is, if I'm right, you haven't got the tools to do that.
Yeah.
Legitimately.
Yeah, we've got the ability, but not the blessing.
So what you're asking us now is a policy to actually to legitimise you going to be out there being impresarios in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
Because we have a venue which you can't rely on the private sector to fill it initially, so let the public sector have a go at it.
Yep.
Right. And you've got professionals in those positions who, I'm not going to try and teach a venue manager how to suck eggs because, they'll know what their break-even point, what their cost of, and the ticket price will be $35 per head. And are the punters prepared to pay that? Time will tell. Exactly. So, I don't think we need to get bogged down in the details of it, present. We're not in the business of telling you guys what, but if you're going to book $660 to do a gig in there, go for it. If you're spending $20,000 and only getting $8,000 in returns, I'm going to be looking for somebody's hands to be smacked quite seriously. But give it a go for six months and come back and tell us, and we might give you another 6 months and then have another.
On that basis then, currently the review date on the policy is July 2029. Do you want to have a resolution that says that it comes back earlier than that for us to have a look and see how it's going and see if it's the right fit for you and the capacity?
I think 6 months and another.
Give it a year.
So
6 months too soon. 6 months too soon. Give it a full year.
resolution in 12 months' time?
Yep.
That's a long.
Yep.
line.
Perfect. Yep.
We're doing anyway, isn't it?
Yep. And just while we're doing that, just as a number, like that we did last Friday with the sellout, that was $39 a ticket.
Great
and that was
stuff.
402 seats sold. So, and just working on Martin's fish and chip ratio there, we worked on 70-30 to 70%.
Everything worked. The sound.
I worked pretty hard behind the scenes. We,
sweet.
7 days into running a brand new building, everyone was working hard to keep it working, but it performed well. So
it's good.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
It was a great event. We want 660 there one day.
And hopefully there's some good learnings.
Yeah. Right across everything.
Yeah. So recommendations A to E. So same in the paper, but then E is notes that.
Sure, the policy is working.
Marvellous. Right, I'm happy to move that. Marty's having to second it. Those in favour? Against? Carried. And we now move to 292, elderly persons housing as a long-term plan consultation item.
Yeah. So Dylan's not here. He's on leave in Brisbane at the moment. Getting David here as well, because David Chief on the housing stock property and transport. There is an implication in there. So it sort of carries on the conversation that councillors have had around our elderly person housing stock, 98 houses. Do we continue to retain ownership? Do we look to put them into a community housing trust and advance those discussions? The report's reasonably sort of lays out a cogent argument both for and against why you would do that. But really the intention is that if we were to take this any further, then because it's such a significant asset, and it provides housing to 98 members of our community, then it would really has to be inside LTP for that level of scrutiny, consultation and discussion with our community. The challenge we have right now is that even when we have to land the LTP by the end of August in the financials, our challenge is recommendation D would be extremely ambitious. This report was probably written by the end of June when preparations for Dylan disappearing. So there's quite a bit of work that we would have to do to have it in that sort of the way this document is written, to include it in the LTP, to make that really important. The detailed budgeting analysis and all that sort of stuff. It's going to be quite a bit of work to be done. I'm not sure we're going to get there in the time that we have. So there's probably some options that we could do around this if you wanted to progress this conversation. Might push things into an LTP amendment later date. Happy to be guided by your thoughts and any questions.
Something in the back of my brain tells me we've been down this path before.
I remember when we were doing the original housing investment project mapping work, one thing was talked about that sort of spectrum, and council was clearly, in terms of social housing spectrum, we're clearly in the business of housing. So that was 3-4 years ago. Yeah, and it was
4 expressions of interest from social service providers to take over the operation of and we had a very poor response. Correct?
During that period, not in that conversation. I don't.
It could have been
before.
Yeah.
Might have been before Martin.
Janice, I think notes.
Janice will be nominated.
Sorry, it was a previous LTP and council did decide that if someone comes forward and wanted to take ownership of the person's units, that council would entertain that. Happened in that situation as we had some people come forward, but they only wanted the high.
Good stuff, not the bad stuff.
And that left Roxburgh and Ranford out on a limb, because of course higher earners, subsidising lower, that's in the outer areas.
That's the problem. We don't want an organisation that's looking at the yield. That's not what we're about.
No. Yeah. Oh, well, carry on. When I first read this, my initial response was I have to agree with what Peter's comments is, and with everything which we've got on our plates with amalgamation and everything else, and factors that our EPS has been well managed, at a good investment. Apparently, it's something that I don't think we should be rushing forward. I think this could go back on the back burner until we actually know where we're at as far as the broader community is concerned, because amalgamation is going to throw up some issues around social housing and things like that that we need to deal with holistically as opposed to dealing with this in isolation. And my initial reaction was it ain't broke, it doesn't need fixing at this stage. And the philosophical argument about whether we should be in this space is for other people to have that decision, not ours now.
There's something from a previous confidential minute, and can I raise it or not?
Depends on what it is.
I'll raise it.
Sit round.
Resolution from confidential meeting in May around Gear Estate. In the resolution, options to be explored to retain up to X number of dwellings within the development for delivery of affordable houses or an investment fund managed by council or another entity. A report will come back to council in July 2026. So obviously we don't have that, but what I'm saying is, I understand you're looking for seed capital or a seed to start a housing trust is essentially the aim of this paper or long-term consultation or not. Yeah, would it not be helpful to have that paper alongside this discussion?
I guess this kind of sits at a separate level, and I do agree with Martin to an extent. We are landlords for a group of people who are becoming more and more vulnerable on a broad spectrum. It used to be you just had older people were in the units, and now you have older people with a lot of, some of them have a lot of additional challenges. Are we the right people to be providing that service? Arguably, Janice is, because the tenants love her and she's doing a spectacular job. The problem being, we can't guarantee that Janice is going to work for us for the next 50 years. So
Wonder it.
this is possibly so. I think there is, and Stu mentioned it yesterday, I think there might be an appetite from some of our individual communities, like the smaller communities of the Teviot and the Maniatoto, to be in charge of those things for themselves. And I think it's maybe a bigger conversation that maybe in the interests of it's not particularly broken at the moment, it's ticking along quite nicely. This is perhaps something that could.
Yeah, I want to jump into this because I've given a lot of thought and I've been and reading through it. The report leans to that we're not the right people all the time that this risk comes on. And I am not a fan of probably feeling like our equity is being used for another region, for another place. Because those elderly persons' houses in Ranfurly, for exist, and the Teviot will be the same, were put there before the last amalgamation. And they're debt-free, and they've been paid for by those ratepayers who want to live there close to their families or whatever else. Now, if we wrote that report and said we're going to build something, they would say, wow, you're addressing housing issues, fantastic. And we're now wanting to technically divest them into an organisation, and I've got no problem, we set one up ourselves, housing, but we're not. We're going to probably use someone else's because of the efficiencies. I don't know that. The report tells me that it's going to come in the back door that someone else will run that for us because they're better. And I'm going to cry wolf on that because no one does it better in our community than our community. And the other thing that really annoyed me a wee bit was it hasn't gone to our community boards. Because in our community board, our building that might get demolished hopefully gets turned into some flats or apartments. And I'm pretty sure, and I'm not saying it's a Queenstown Housing Affordable Trust that might manage that, but the best place for that decision will be made at this table or at our table in Ranfurly. So I get really nervous when sometimes our assets get divested into an organisation that we have not got the control on, and the one we chucked it back out time and time again, who plays God? In our community, it may be if you're going to divest it, our district, our wee health board who run a hospital, a rest home, care facility, get it divested or sold at a rate to them or leased to a rate for them so they can contribute the destiny of their community. And we never saw that more than we saw yesterday. And if Queenstown Housing Trust want to use some other mechanism, I get the trust can go to the Crown and get money because that's what allows it to do, then maybe some of the assets we've got, and if it has to be in Cromwell or Wanaka or Bannockburn and Alexandria, maybe some of those assets might be feeds not there, but not, I'm sticking up for my community, not our assets.
And that the Queenstown Housing Trust is not the only trust that.
No, and it may be that we set one up and we use some of our own assets. But to me, at the moment, there's too much going on to turn around. And to be fair, no matter what you say, those elderly people in those wee towns are going to go, oh, there's council amalgamated with Dunedin, Queenstown or Timaru, and then they're going to get rid of all the elderly person housing. Wrong time.
We're not actually being asked to do that, are we? Because this all it says here is actually agrees to it becoming a consultation item.
Or not, as an option 5, do nothing.
Includes the possible transfer of.
Yeah,
but I canvassed some community members about elderly persons housing, and the unanimous discussion that the stuff that they told me was, well, we've always done it. It's not broken. Keep doing it. And then when I said to them about some of the concerns that Janice has very rightly raised in relation to, and you said, Madam Mayor, before about, there's an additional level that we're asking our team to undertake. I'm wondering about it more from a resource point of view, as opposed to reconstructing all of this. I'm thinking, and that might be you, Peter, how do we resource it appropriately so that there is the right type of person to be able to help look after or help facilitate engagement? I don't know. And you know what I said? Do you think ratepayers, my question, next year's question was, do you think ratepayers would be happy to pay for this? And they said, we're based on small communities. And if we're not looking after our elderly, especially the most vulnerable of our elderly, then that's not who we are as Central Otago. And so that's what I have heard. And I tend to agree with that. So I'm wondering if it's some of that stuff, yes, we've got this, but some of it needs to be looked at from a resourcing point of view.
I think if you're then talking about, is there a possibility that in the future, this council be responsible for employing a social worker to look after our vulnerable tenants? That's probably a conversation that is a wee bit much to try and cram into the next month to then get in the LTP for next year. And maybe we could push it forward to a future LTP when it can be given the due consideration that it needs, because as far as we're aware, there are no major problems or impediments to running the service as we currently are for our elderly pensioners in those houses for the next 3 years.
It does make sense for council to consider this in conjunction with the wider housing question, because it all is a bit of, it's a spectrum, and I think would be quite challenging to make a decision on this part without thinking of the whole and your position on the whole. And I know it's, we've had many conversations over the years and we haven't quite landed it. It's option 5, to do more work and to come back as an LTP amendment or the next LTP. The other thing you could do is, if you wanted to canvass the community sentiment for it in your LTP, you could say whether or not, in essence, the community were interested in exploring it, with a yes, no, and if yes, put X numbers dollars into, it wouldn't be a huge amount, into exploring it. The challenge with that option also is that we'd have to get, the thinking behind it ready in the next couple of weeks to bring back to you in August. But there still is a way that you could potentially sort of canvass the community, or you just take it completely out of this LTP and run it separately.
I think we know our community think that this is the right thing to do. And Racing's to your point, we like looking after our own and our community, and we want to do it well. Are we doing it as well as it possibly can be? That's probably a future LTP question, unless anybody really wants this to be crammed into this LTP now.
The part of the front, why is it that appetite to want to keep pushing it back? And affordable housing was one of those things that we chucked out time and time again because of different things. And yes, I understand that.
Part of the reason for that is because one of the things under the regional deals is inclusionary zoning. If that gets over the line, then 5% of all developments, the land will be given to council for affordable housing. So it's likely under that sort of scenario, we'd probably want some sort of community housing provider to be able to deliver against that.
But then that's was the point I was trying to make at the start, is there's a number of options of getting the seed capital there, and there's one we've already potentially identified. So they need to be considered. If that's the main aim of this paper, which I saw it was, then they need to be considered together.
There's probably then enough guts for an LTP amendment if all of those things do land at once.
Yeah.
And in the meantime,
LTP amendments, we've got to get them with this, so there's a bit of cost, but let me open, if we got the work ready in time, I do have a fully staffed team. I think that's sort of been the reluctance in the past with any LTP amendment is, we haven't got the resources.
it would only be if something happened that meant that we needed to actually enable that mechanism prior to the next LTP.
And a bit of clarification is called for too. Our elderly person's housing is social housing, not affordable housing. There is a difference.
That's right.
And we've always had an issue around this table about getting involved in social housing, except for EPS. We won't do social housing for 25 to 45-year-olds, but we will. So, there's a bit of debate to be held.
And I think that, that's right. And I think the reason why it's been so efficient is because staff have done a really good job to now. And they've been doing it for 20 or 30 years and hasn't been too many problems. Yes, there are issues with some tenants, but there are in private land holdings as well. And I think Janice and her team have done a great job. They've been updated. The people, the older, let's say ladies in our community, say they really like the flats. They're really happy with what we've got. And I just think don't need to touch it at the moment.
I think the status quo remains, and it's something we need to revisit. We'll need to revisit in a holistic manner, looking at social housing and affordable housing as one big picture.
And like
that's not the job for us now, because we will not be here in 18 months or 2 years' time. So,
and I think that what I said to the TVEC before, and I said to Tammy yesterday, is that if there's going to be divestment or asset shifting, especially in our rural remote communities, it should go back to where it was funded before we get blown apart by amalgamation or anything else, because those elderly people, my mother and father's age, paid for those units, and they would be distraught to think that equity was being taken somewhere else for someone else, and they didn't have a chance to use it. I mean, that's how I feel about it.
So potentially then we would look at resolutions. Receive the report and accept the level of significance. Agrees the future ownership and delivery model for council's elderly persons housing portfolio is a significant strategic issue for the district, and agrees to defer options for transferring. Don't want to put for transferring. Agrees to defer options for the future of elderly persons housing for a future long-term plan. Perfect.
yeah, I'm quite happy to too. Yeah.
Thank you. Cheryl's happy to second that. All those in favour? Look, we just freed up a little bit of bandwidth.
I know.
Very grateful, thank you.
Can I just do a shout out to our property team on that, because they do an awesome job looking after our tenants, and it comes with massive support from you guys as well. You really connect them to the community, and so the support you give the team as well is awesome too. So
It's around to kick them up. And so soon.
Not go around to help you.
She's not coming, she's already
There's
said
one on
she's
the
not looking
sports
after you,
station.
Martin.
I'm going to come and visit on a Monday night.
It's in a contract.
It's 302 grand budgets for the long-term plan. Hi, Rebecca.
Kind of far behind, are we?
I'm going to stick to my notes today. Kia ora everybody. So this report is to consider recommendations from each of the community boards on their grant levels for the 27-37 long-term plan, and to set the level of the council's own community and museum grant budgets. Each board considered the level of grants required for their ward and the rating impact of those on their ward ratepayers. I just wanted to make a note on the Teviot Valley Community Board resolution. I kept the original resolution from the board in the recommendations on the paper. However, I've given Wayne two alternatives because the promotions grants reserve at Teviot still remains high at about $15,000. And it is proposed that reserve is used until we rate again for it. And so I've got two alternative resolutions from Wayne, but I wanted to honour the actual board. That's been circulated to the board and no issues have been raised. Oh yeah, I've got the figures here. It sits at 17,665. So that's a reduction of $1.59 on average rate. It's recommended that the council grants remain as budgeted, which is $155,394. Museum grants have $137,796 budgeted. ADMI in particular have consistently requested increased funding, and you'll recall the last LTP, there was quite a presentation from that sector. And also ADMI have got an application in for the current round that's open that you'll get at the, I think, September council meeting, which is considering another application from ADMI for an additional 40,000 on top of the 82 that they've already been allocated. And so a review of the support for arts, culture and heritage has been scheduled to take place this financial year, but it's not in time to influence these budget levels. And so you may wish to consider what is an appropriate figure for that museum grants budget. I haven't given any more guidance than that. I'm just flagging it to you. Grants allow council to support community initiatives and include events and promotions, and often result in much better value for money for the community that the council can achieve on its own. We particularly look to fund things that other funders won't fund in district. And so we enable to maximise the community spend, if you like. I have got the finance team are reluctant to give average rating impacts because it is an average. It's a blunt tool that you're just dividing the dollar figure by the amount of ratepayers, and it does fluctuate depending on valuations. But that is available if you want, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Wayne, do you want to put up those two alternate resolutions? Caveat, please.
Sure. Questions? Does anybody who sits on the community boards want to make any comments? Questions on any of that?
The few stuff have been run past us. I think you mentioned it and we're pretty happy.
Cromwell is obviously a reasonably large sum twice over there, but it's spent is highly contested, and I think the community board sees a good return on that investment. So it is more than some of the others, but goes pretty good for a return on the dollar.
So why isn't the 150,000 for the Alexander Blossom Festival included in the grants for the?
Separate that you've shown.
For that one there, so I'll talk to that. So as part of the work around the LTP, we had that discussion, we shared with you where the numbers were. We've backed out a whole lot of things from the budget, which we'll bring back to you in August the 12th or 13th. And you'll have a decision to make, to give us guidance that you want that put in. But to get to where we think we need to get the budget to, we've backed everything out. And we're backing more out now. But that doesn't mean that that decision won't stand. It's just you'll have another opportunity to make that decision in light of everything that you.
For those newer to the table, Blossom Festival has gone around and round and around my entire time on council as to whether it should be a line item in our budget or not. It has gone in and out of contestable grants funding many times over this over the last 7 years. And where we seem to have landed is that it is a nationally significant event in that it is the longest running street parade in New Zealand. And that is a budget line that this council contributes to, kind of where it has landed at this point, recognising that budgets are all going to be up in the air, but that is the reason why it's been pulled out of.
When I was a kid and attended Blossom festivals, they used to actually raise money and build an awful lot of things for Alex. Didn't require funding.
Good. Funding, going right back in the old borough days, because the history of it, council, the very first council waived all its fees and charges for the use of council facilities to the tune of, in 1957, £500. And that was the donation that the council made. So you want to extrapolate that out?
We have those resolutions, they've gone through the community boards. Those are the recommendations of our community boards, that is the amount that their communities should be funding. TVIT's
new F up there, which is approved a maximum of 17,665 to be available to the Teviot Valley Community Board through their reserves to fund promotions and events grants for the 28 to 30 financial years. So it will come back in that next LTP, and agrees that the Teviot Valley Community Board does not need to seek council approval to spend reserves funds for promotions grants through that period.
Do we have to draw it right down before we start waiting for it, or just get it down?
It will come back in the next LTP. We'll have a lot.
Yes.
So for the community grants, it's down to about, if you approve the grants for this current round, you'll be down to about 5. So that's why you'll back rating for it, because you've still got a little bit of a buffer, but you need to start getting money again. We suspect once there's a new event centre, the event centre is replaced, then that will start being used again. And there's probably going to be a big hoolie to begin with. And then just the last one is what is the right amount for museum in the interim while that other Piggles work's being done.
Happy with that? Please. Thank you, Bob and Martin.
All those in favour?
Thank you.
Just a question, Charlie. When you went to the Blossom Festival, did you get a toffee apple for you and the horse, or how did it go? Did you get a toffee apple for you and the horse when you went to the Blossom Festival?
We are just
I'm gonna get a toffee apple and
on the Omen Grove Hub, please, page 309. Frame fee is inflicted at her dining room
Didn't
table.
realise it.
Hey, Marty.
Buddy. You just tell me you were Ronald McDonald once.
Was.
afternoon.
You better open, there's only one been tapped.
Now, Stu.
I'll take the report as read. This is just an update on how the project's progressing. After some initial delays, it's progressing really well, looking like the roof will be going on towards the end of August and completion in April 2027.
Looking really good when you drive past. It looks like a building. Proper building. Any questions?
The forecast, sorry, yeah.
Yep.
The forecast projected to go over. Can you run me through that, given that the council money's contingency or just?
So the original budget was $5.1 million.
Yep.
And then when we got the construction costs in, we were looking at 4.1, but there's been some variations on top of that. So council had approved to cover the shortfall of 1.6 and
Up to.
up to 1.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. So it's not going to go past that though.
No,
No, that's what I'm getting at.
We're
Yeah.
forecasting about 1 million of that 1.6.
Yeah,
at this
yeah,
stage.
yeah. So yeah, it's forecast over the budget initial bill, but not over the actual funding amounts.
No, so we're well within budget and the delays and stuff is just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
We've had to work through that process, but we're well and truly going to make budget.
So if any of that under budget, under allocation, thank you, was needed for something else, maybe in there, whether it be a fit out, part of a fit out, do we have to, can that be a change of use as a part of the building? Or does it have to go back in the corpus and go back round for funding?
I would imagine that we would have to bring a paper back to this board to change scope. So we've got.
Yeah, that's, I guess, what I'm asking, because a member of the public suggested to me one day that they would try to raise funds from looking at part of the facilities in there, this fit out. I've got a kitchen slash. And if that money's been allocated to that project, is there a chance we can rescope it for still be within the facility, I guess I'm saying?
There's the contract has fit out, isn't it? Doesn't it?
Yeah, so,
Stuff. So if they come up with an idea of, like, say they wanted to sponsor an oven or a second oven or something, is that sort of the kind of thing you're thinking of?
the full kitchen fit out is included in the contract, right? So that's all in there. The only real fit out is furniture, really.
Right, it was just brought up to me. And that's why I'll just make sure that if we do, have allocation there, to make it a complete facility under budget would be a great outcome.
Yeah, we do. There'll be a component in there for fixtures, furniture and fit outs.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll be a fantastic facility. Get a couple of tight forwards and a speedy backs too. The rugby team might come right too.
Marvellous. Recommendation that the report be received and its very positive contents noted. Thank you. Cheryl's happy to move that. Seconder, please. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Carried. Thanks, guys. Change to fees and charges, page 317.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read. This was a mistake on my part. This fee had already been budgeted at the $72 and $108 in the budget, and all the invoices sent out and everything like that. So
basically, dog owners, congratulations, you've gotten a $2 discount in future years.
in the current year, the invoices were already sent out. This was just a omission on my part in terms of inflation adjustment that shouldn't have been applied.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Thank you. In favour?
Thank you.
Thank you. Remuneration Authority determination begins on page 320. There is no pay rise for you.
Happy to
Continue
put
doing your
taking
good
as
work.
read.
Thank you, Martin
Second.
and Nathan. Those in favour?
The next one.
Aye, against, carried. Page on your supplementary pages, we are going to go to the statement of proposal for rates review.
Bringing the team up.
Welcome, team.
Thank you, councillors. We're just going to take the report as read, and there is a small presentation that Jeeves wants to make before we open up for questions.
Yeah.
That's while Wayne's getting that sorted. This has been a really big project, and Paul's team and our team had spent a lot of time getting this ready to go out to the public. So of course, Paul and his team are doing the number crunching and the real sort of hardcore data part of it. And then our team is trying to take that information and make it relatable to the public. So both aspects of that have been quite challenging on this project. So what we're going out with is a statement of proposal that will, we hope, capture the complexity of this project, but make it understandable for the general public, because we want them to be involved and understand what this will mean so that they can make an educated choice when it comes to consultation. So this is just a brief explanation of what's in the document. The graphic over to the side is just an example. There's lots of others like this, but I put that up there just to show how we're trying to make this relatable so that people can see sort of how they fit in. So these are examples of different types of properties. So the statement of proposal goes through why we're doing this, because people want to know what we're proposing. And in those explanations of each option, we have a couple of different ways to help people look at these options and sort of see how it might relate to them. So one of them is a rates comparison between different types of property, commercial, rural, lifestyle, so they can see how it relates for each of those options. And then the overall impact. So how many people will see an increase? How many people will see a decrease? And we think that's important because we know people will go straight to the rates calculator. The rates calculator is really important and it's very detailed. Henri and Paul and Nathan's team have done an amazing job at creating a rates calculator that I think is quite impressive. But this overall impact helps people to see what impacted other people, not just them. And then these personas is what's the graphic up on the screen. And this has required a lot of work for both of our teams to find, what are the best examples for us to show people. And so we hope that this helps people look at the document and say, okay, that's kind of like me, or that's kind of like my neighbor, my friend that's a farmer. I'm not a farmer, but maybe someone else is. This is how it might affect them. And then advantages and disadvantages. So each of those options so that people can clearly see. At the end of that document, the submission form is going to be included. It'll also be online on Let's Talk. Next slide, mine. This is just a screenshot of the Let's Talk page. I assume most of you have already been there. So it's been a work in progress. We had just a little bit of information at first. Now there's a little bit more. We've included a lot more FAQs now. The rates calculator will be up here once the numbers are finalized and it's approved. Lots of more other documents. So when it opens on Monday, this page will be fully ready to go. The FAQs might emerge we might add some as we go along. There might be questions that you're hearing that you think we need to address, and if you let us know, we'll add those. Next slide, Wayne. You've seen this before. This is the list of the community meetings and drop-in sessions. Some of you are already getting lined up to speak at those and other community meetings, so thanks for that. It'll be a busy time, all of us. But yeah, thanks for your support. Next slide. And this is just an example of the advertising that's going to go out. So you'll see this coming this week and in the next couple of weeks. Because we have so many drop-in sessions, it was a challenge to advertise all of them. So we've highlighted our community information sessions, and we've just asked people to look on Let's Talk for those drop-in sessions. Be sure and promote those when you're out in your communities. Next slide, Wayne. This is just an example of what they will be for each ward. So there'll be the main advertisement, and then there'll be separate ones for each ward. Next slide. So we open on Monday. So everything that we're discussing today, once we get approval, then we're going to finalize everything. Paula's team, we're going to make this all ready, and it will be live Monday, closing on Friday, 4th September. Questions about that?
Sorry, those samples, the personas we put in there are actually our sample properties that we've used throughout all of our in-plan and long-term plans. So there is a linkage back to our historical documents, so we can see the changes as they go through for each of those properties.
Critical things that we would really value appreciate feedback on is the submission form. We've developed that. It's questions are there's a short survey. We've thought about the level of demographic information you need to help inform the information you're receiving. And so that's why we've split out between whether people. We've included owning and renting because obviously there's ratepayers affected, but there's also residents who do rent. So we're just differentiating them for you so that you can see that when that data comes back. The ward questions is just so that you can get a perspective of who's fed back from where and also those types of property. And also we've made an allowance for people who might want to talk on behalf of their own property versus people who might be in a business to try and get that differentiation for you so you can see who's coming through. We talked last time we were here about the value of registering through Let's Talk, and we know it's a barrier. So what we've talked with the Mayor about how we can try and capture as much data as possible, make it as rigorous as possible for you to see and not register so that you've got that surety that you haven't got duplicated responses, but there's also the flexibility that people who do own a house and have a business can also input. So we've required an email address, so you've got that as your unique identifier.
Version document looks really good. Yes.
Well done.
Clear, it's easy. We were just commenting, we really like the little blocks where it shows the breakup with the different colours that shows this is how much residential and I think that'll be important for some of those other operators like commercial and utilities. Actually, our residents who are living in a residential area do carry a large proportion of the rates burden.
On page 14 on the graph, the overall impact of this situation. Range of decrease in the last one, you've got less than 1250. Should that be more than 1250?
Yes.
Thank you. Good spotting. Thank you very much.
Maybe.
Next one.
Two chocolate fishes coming.
They're just the one. Yeah, punch in the face. Page 16 is the same again. Same graph.
Yes, I've spotted it was 3 of them.
We can blame the education standards of maths in our schools for that.
Yeah. But on page 16, under differentiating commercial, the statement, commercial rates are often set higher than residential rates, is true under the current model when your land value is the mechanism for the general rate. Does that still stand if you change the capital value?
But because we're differentiating and what we're actually saying is that, I guess what you're asking about,
Often with commercial value is what I'm asking.
and what we're treating commercial as, it's a wider range of activities. So you would still have that in the case of, for argument's sake, the rural space where farming has we've got some big farms that have high value. So they would pay more under a differentiated base.
Yes, the statement, commercial rates are often set higher than residential rates. Are you saying that the general, they pay more rates, or are you saying that the commercial rate is generally higher? Because
in terms of the absolute dollars.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's what you're saying there. You're not saying that there's a standard that commercial rates are different.
Not in the CODC space. We've always charged, they pay the same fixed charges, they pay the same dollar per dollar charge as everybody else, but they pay more because they have bigger values. That's what
that statement's saying. So what was it there under the differential section?
What we're trying to say also is that they do use more services. If you take the town, for argument's sake, and the Cromwell Mall, the standards, granted the Cromwell Mall paving is probably not a great example, but it was when it was originally put in, I would guess. There is more resource put into those areas than a standard, for argument's sake, footpath.
I guess if I read that as Joe Bloggs, I read it as there's a precedent around the country that you have a differential on commercial rates. Because
that's not what we're saying, because we don't know the answer in terms of
just, I don't know what
we can have a
how it reads to me.
Yeah, we do have that resolution E, which will allow us to make, if those are the things we need to change slightly, we can run.
Yeah,
so we can look at
that. Was just my reading, and it sort of implies that.
Yep,
that's just me.
Being really, really pedantic. Can we not use contractions instead of say can we say we are? Sorry, I know that's page 10 and page 11. It's just and especially when you've got it in bold, I just
Where are you looking at?
Page 10.
So we do that throughout the document, and it is intentional to make it conversational rather than, so it's something you can chat through rather than a formal document.
You sound like a military moron otherwise.
But you can rest assured there'll be no contractions in your council reports.
Tracy, we'll change it to WHERE if that helps you.
So that is deliberate.
It's a legal document.
No,
It's a consultation
I
document.
know, but it's just, I can't stand it.
Yeah. That again, it's more relatable.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is distill a really complicated issue into something that is easily understood, easily read, and people don't switch off after page 2 because it is so legalese. That's why we. And I must admit, the team here will vouch for this. I did struggle with some of the stuff that these guys came up with because I'm all for the legalese part of it. So I get where you're coming from.
Paul was great to work with.
Can't wait to write your next birthday card. Right, resolutions are on page 4. Noting that Curtis's minor amendments. Are we happy to move A through E and encourage as many of our community as possible to get involved in the fund versus send? Yep, I'm happy to move it. Curtis is happy to second it because it's got all those in favour. Again, carried. And that big date that it will be going out?
Monday.
Monday.
Just one small favour. We talked in the last workshops about other engagement opportunities if the elected members wanted to lead something. We haven't heard anything back as yet. If you could let us know by the end of this week what they are, because we can help promote those. But we're just blind on that at the minute. So if you want anything else you want promoted that we can do centrally, happy to do so.
And just thank you for your support over the last 13 odd months that it's taken us to get to this point now. So
There's a lot of options.
it's done, there was a lot of options.
To be fair, quite a lot of confusion and uncertainty, and to have instilled it for something like this is kudos on you guys.
It is good.
Team.
Right.
I think that's also a good reminder to remembering where the public is. They're back where you guys were over a year ago. So we have to remember when we're talking to people, they're not where you are, even where we are. You know, I've come in relatively late, so it is a handy reminder to kind of start from the beginning. Yeah.
It's been made is that this comes up, it's really at odds with the potential rejig of council and as to why we're doing it, but it's important to get that message out as to why we've decided to put all our effort into a rates review and changing the system when we're probably not going to be rating them in 2 years or whatever. If any, yeah. But if there's any commentary at the moment, that's this is a waste of time because it's not even going to be. So it's explaining why we're doing it, why it's beneficial as much as what we're doing. Because you know, council wastes our time and money.
Exactly,
but that's the
Right, so moving to the next thing, we have got our.
I wasn't sure if I was going to correct it.
Get a pay rise, so we just passed it.
Did you go?
Thank you so much, we're on fire. They did 2 in a row.
Straight after the.
A few more things to get through and then we'll take a quick break when we get to the end of this little block. So keep your questions pertinent. Go ahead, Donna. And
contractions and things.
I'll take this paper as being read. Overall, there hasn't been a lot of change since the last report that I brought to you. So I'll just ask any questions you may have. Just note we are also end of June and we're still working through our end of year journals. We don't actually have any final numbers in June. Risk meeting in September, I believe, for the interim before we do that. So this is the financials as at 31 May 2026. For the 11 months in the financial year, there was an overall operating variance of 3 million and operating surplus of 0.2 million. Income continues to be unfavourable with an unfavourable variance of 7.9 million. This is mainly for continuous development contributions and land sales which driving this one. Expenditure has a favourable variance of 612,000 and it is continuing to be high. Well, sorry, depreciation continues to be high and then we're lower on other expenses. Capital expenditure has an underspend of $12.5 million, with 73% of total revised budget being spent. As at 30 June, I think we're about 82% of the total revised budget being spent. Yeah. Total external debt is 85 million. As at May, we did finish the financial year at 96 million. Well, I had.
Sorry, yeah, the red on all the CapEx, implications into next year.
Be reviewed and if they are still continuing, they will be carried forward within the budget and financial year, starting to gear up.
So we will revise next year's based on, yeah,
Yes.
and trying to get rid of red for this time next year perhaps, or?
Well,
That
so,
will come down to project planning.
Yeah, yeah.
They come through. That's.
yeah. And what we're trying to do with the reforecasting, which is just about to start, is if stuff's being pushed into the current financial year we're in now, what I'd like to see is anything that they're thinking about not being able to complete, being pushed through into the LTP as an LTP item rather than pushing it out. And so we're getting an achievable,
Yes.
an achievable amount to deliver rather than this lot comes in from the previous year, which means we don't get to achieve next year. It keeps pushing and pushing. So and that gives us a better budgeting option come LTP time, because we know basically what we're really up for in terms of CapEx and funding.
Yes.
So that's the plan.
Yeah, because it's sort of, it tints it a bit because then your borrowing costs are lower because you're drawing down less, but your delivery less. And so it looks good in one part and bad in one
Yeah,
part.
well, there's a whole raft of, what we're actually doing is we're setting rates based on a level of
things we're not going to
things that we're not going to do. So we could have actually delayed that rates rise or smoothed it out or whatever.
And the risk is that the year, if your sort of model runs like this, 1 year it'll all catch up on you, and the bracket number will be through the roof, which you don't want. We don't want.
There's all sorts of implications on your interest, your repayments, as well as your depreciation and funding. And especially if all projects get pushed and then they all happen in 1 year, you have a big leap in your rates increases.
Yeah, yeah.
But there is an intention to try and push through as many of those water jobs as we can.
Yeah, yeah.
And the water team sort of actively trying to get through that before we transfer across to the next.
That the report be received. Thank you, Curtis, and seconded. Thank you, Charlie. Those in favour? We now move to the procurement policy amendment. Welcome.
Just bringing you a minor amendment to the procurement policy, just to allow for Southern Waters to proceed efficiently with their procurement, because our policy refers to our structure, so names like group managers, and Southern Waters doesn't currently have those. I've just amended and added on page 407 of your agenda, a little table that shows how Southern Waters can approve standard procurement plans. And because we are the lead organisation for the establishment, they are following all procedures. So this just wraps it up nicely and makes sure that they don't have to either go through internal GMs who don't necessarily have oversight of what's actually happening, and they can move at pace, which is required at the moment.
Do you anticipate anything would come to us? $1 million threshold?
Yeah, potentially. Potentially.
Would it just come to us given we're the lead council, the other councils?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all 4 councils have approved a transition budget of 8.8 million. And we are the funding agency for that.
That policy's in place until established.
1st of July, 30th of June, and then 1st of July, they before that they'll be the legal stuff with the LGFA, the funding agency and all that sort of stuff. But effectively, the crossover is that 1st of June.
Yeah, just looking at in page 406, just a clarification. I'm not sure whether it was by the time I was reading this page, I was a little bit confused. That 406, it's where it says exemption from standard tender, spend level 500 be approved. And that's under the non-standard procurement. Is that a departure from what's existing, or is that what's there now?
That's what's,
Yeah, and what's in place now.
current policy, yeah.
Okay. And then I guess the same on Southern Waters, which I think you might have just dealt with there. That's the same thing. Is that a 500, that's a 500K shift for Southern Waters upwards, is that correct?
So where we've just got an extra layering where it could be 2 group managers, so between 200 and 500,000 for a non-standard, 2 group managers can approve that procurement plan. Because Southern Waters doesn't have that, it kind of just skips up to the next level that we've got. So we've got 500 to $1 million is GM and CEO, and then they've got program director and CEO right down from 200 all the way to $1 million. So they just don't have the middle layer.
Thank you. Thank you. That's nice.
As we receive the report and adopt the revised procurement policy. Thanks, Sarah. Seconded. Thanks, Tracy. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And then we'll flow on to the e-risk report.
So this is the second month we've seen this in its current date. So this is the June key risk register that you're seeing. So nothing's changed, but it's probably based on the fact you've had some pretty substantial conversations today. Just a good and timely reminder that we did see last quarter some increases in risk, and you know they're not going to drop anytime soon. So we are currently trying to get through a pretty significant risk environment with more and more change that's being added as we progress through certain things. Simplifying local government, consultation items for the LTP. So yeah, it's just probably a reminder for me to keep the risk conversations front of mind. And I'll take any questions.
The one with the obligations to iwi, how come that's increased? Is that just due to volume that's related to that, or?
Yes, it is quite volume related. So there's a lot of different activities happening at the moment, especially with sort of central government activities that are being pushed onto local government that don't necessarily align with our current obligations are to iwi. So it's not what we are doing and what we can control necessarily, but it's just the part we play that can be perceived by iwi or any sort of external stakeholders that we're not necessarily meeting those obligations. So that's why it went up, not that we're doing anything wrong. Yes.
Can you measure it? Who measures it? I mean,
Well, I mean, we know in a conversation we had around regional deals, there was some reasonably strong words said. And so, you know, we, in some of our engagement with Mana Whenua partners, stuff, they'll talk to us, exchange. So we get a sense of that. And look, we're not the only ones being overwhelmed by the government reform that's coming.
I guess the discussions are ongoing, right? We're
always ongoing.
Always ongoing. So, I mean, what I'm saying is, where does it become a failure? And how do we measure failure? We could argue we're not consulting our community. Is that a failure? I'll say, I never heard that you're going to put a water scheme in Omacao. Oh, it's hard. I'm saying it's hard, but it looks as a risk. It looks like we've done something wrong.
Well, the good thing is it's not an issue yet. So nothing has crystallized relating to that risk. It's still just something that we need to keep an eye on, and if it gets take action to sort of bring it back down. But right now, unfortunately, in a position where we can bring that one back down to where it was. It was for a long time. It was sitting in the low category, and that was stable for a long time. But we've just seen it pick up.
But you see it like as a risk. It's something when it's low, you don't need to be as aware of it because a lot of things happening and are you aware of stuff? We've got to be we've got to be more aware of what's going on.
But I guess what I'm saying is,
so we have done anything wrong.
Chat, we're having a lot more engagement than we've probably ever had, and it's even look at the deal we had talking today, the communication, because if it's a risk that we're not doing wrong, what can we do better? I guess I'm saying
it's a good way to manage risk is to have conversations.
Yeah.
So is that good from conversations with the kaha, or is it from conversations with iwi leaders?
I think it's more, we have a formal arrangement with Okaha. But it's probably fair to say that there's no formal arrangement with the Mana Whenua partners. That's the seven iwi, seven runaka. ORC, well, they did. DCC has formal arrangement. So we don't have a formal arrangement. So it's up to the mayor and her going around speaking to people when she does and to keep that link alive with the likes of Mana. And if you look at the Puna Mahara opening, we had a fantastic turnout by iwi Mana Whenua to help us. So, you know, there's things we are doing, but sometimes if there's no formal arrangement, then it's ad hoc arrangements and initiatives by the mayor to try and keep bridging that gap.
As long as it's not saying that, not. Bit of my heart. But in saying that, it feels like, look at that, hang on, what are we doing? It's probably not the case.
Recommendation that we receive the report and note its contents. Thank you, Bob and Nathan. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Page 423 is my report, which I'm just going to take as read in the interest of time. Any questions on that? Not, I'm happy to move it. Tracy's happy to second it. Favour? Against? Carried. Governance report, page 426. And that is our status reports, and there are some changes on some of them, which is quite exciting. Anything you'd like to note, mate?
Yes, I would. No, but QP assures me that Fort is near.
No.
Is that stretch from a small group?
Just next council meeting, we'll have the draft land development standards coming to you for approval to go out for consultation during September. And we're just working through some re-engagement with a few select survey firms who are just giving us some feedback on the draft to make sure we're not putting something up that we've missed something and utilising their expertise to support us. So we've got a feedback session with them next week, and then the draft didn't come through the council process for August meeting, and it'll be a celebration to get that one off the status report list.
It reads really well, and that is awesome. And I was really pleased to see that kind of consultation and two-way feedback with, you know, our community who are operating in that space. I think it's important. I think it's a great step forward for us. So great job. We'll be looking forward to their feedback and then having that come back to council for the celebration, Wayne, when it comes up. Is there anything else?
No,
Any questions on any of those updates for the status reports? I will, they will be received. Someone's happy to second that. That's Tracy. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Community board and committee minutes begin on page 514 and continue for the next 20 odd pages. Yes, 514. Any questions on any of those? No, I'm happy to move that they be received. Thanks, Tracy. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And then the date of our next meeting is the 26th of August, which is fast enough.
Yeah, and it's going to be
It's going to be at Te Puna Maha from Wellington Event Centre. Excellent. Now we have a resolution to exclude the public on page 534. I'm happy to move that we go into public excluded. Stu's happy to second that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And I'll just note, because I did see in the paper the other day that apparently we have 17 things in public excluded, but I don't see 17 on there. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
what's the one?
Oh, right. It's seven.
Fingers, eh?
No, fantastic. And we'll just take a quick break because we are back on time, which is amazing. Would you like 10 minutes or would you like 15?
Got it out, Curtis. But she said, yeah, that's what she's gonna